Everybody, welcome back into Bayou Time. Harry McCullough here. We're always concerned about what's going to happen to our area, what's going to happen to South Louisiana. What about the oil field? What about the future of what's going to go down, down the bayou, and as far as energy and whether we're going to be the energy coast for a lot longer. Something is coming up down in Port Fourchon is going to make a big deal about that, and it's going to help a lot of people feel a little bit better about the direction where we're headed. Here to talk about is Chett Chiasson, the executive director of the Greater Lafourche Port Commission. So, thanks so much for being here. This is awesome news about Fourchon, and we were just talking. Everybody's always kind of worried, like, God, man, what are we going to do? Are our kids going to have jobs down the road? But we were going to talk about a cooperative endeavor agreement. Kind of, it makes a long-term commitment to Fourchon.
That's right. And thanks for having us, Harry. It's really good to bring information to the viewing audience about what's going on in Port Fourchon, what's going on in our region when it comes to energy and development of Port Fourchon for sure. So this cooperative endeavor agreement is an agreement between the Port Commission and 3 different companies, Sea Logistics, Bollinger, and Grand Isle Shipyard. And those 3 companies are looking at Fourchon Island, which is on the east side of Belpass when you're coming into Port Fourchon from the Gulf, as a new development area that we have identified, the port has identified that as a new development, deep water port area many, many years ago. And we've been working towards that for several years now, and this is kind of like the culmination of a lot of work that we've put into it, and these 3 companies see this as the next opportunity for them. Obviously, those names are not unfamiliar to the viewers,
Right.
and to you and I.
Sure.
Right? They're part of our community. They hire local people, and people from all over actually that need to come in. This new development is going to attract business for deep water rig repair and refurbishment, which Louisiana currently doesn't have today, as well as we don't have enough capacity in the United States for that matter. Decommissioning, which is something that's coming with these larger deep water facilities that need to be decommissioned because they're coming against their useful life, as well as project cargo, potential for offshore wind, and some fabrication and those sorts of things that we currently don't have on a large scale in Port Fourchon. You're right. Today we're the daily operational exploration and production service base, but we want to be a full service offshore energy port, right? And that's what this Fourchon Island development will allow us to do. And when you look at it, you're looking at hundreds of millions of dollars of investment that in the next several years, 5, 10, 15 years are going to come into our community. Upwards of 2,000 people are going to be needed to hire to work at this facility. So this is a big deal, and we're excited about this opportunity, excited about this partnership with local businesses as we move forward into the future.
Yeah, it's awesome. People got to have a place to live.
That's right.
They got to have a place to work and eat and do all that kind of stuff. And this is going to be millions, probably billions by the time we're finished with the development. Where is it now? You said the eastern part of Fourchon. Can you explain that? And
Sure.
you guys have been kind of making land, really.
Absolutely.
At that spot,
So this is on the east side of Fourchon. It's about 900 acres, a little over 900 acres of property that we believe we can turn in to about 550 or so acres of developed property. So we're going to develop it by dredging a slip, just as we do in the rest of the port, regular part of the port, right? The normal part of the port that we've been operating in for many, many years, since 1960. So the same sort of mentality there is you build the land up using dredge material, and then you mitigate for any impacts to marsh and open water bottoms. And we're going to mitigate to the east of the port, recreating marsh for protection purposes. Coastal protection is
Sure.
critical for us, and we always like to use all of our dredge material beneficially. This is also part of, bringing more infrastructure in. So the old Fourchon Bridge is gone, has been gone since 2018. It was useful life. It was 2 Leeville bridges ago.
Right.
That bridge that was there. Actually, 3 Leeville bridges ago, that is the bridge that was there. So it was 80-something years old. So that bridge, it needs to be replaced. So we have a plan in place. We have a design in place, and we're putting the funding together. That's a $32 million bridge.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're
So
putting.
it's going to be privately owned?
It's going to be a
privately
public.
funded? Yeah.
It's going to be public dollars. So port some federal, we hoping, and state dollars to put into that $32 million bridge and road, connector road. That's moving along, so we should have our permit to do that by the end of the year or early next year. So we're excited about all of that. So this is all playing into our plan as we've been pushing forward to as well deepen Port Fourchon.
Right. That, which is always something you probably have to do all the
Absolutely.
time anyway.
Correct.
Right. So a timetable. So it's permits and all that first. Within a year, you may be breaking ground on a bridge, and then how long for the whole thing?
Right. So we do this in phases, right? So hopefully we have our permit within the year, by the end of the year or early next year, for the bridge and the initial dredging of the slip on Fourchon Island. If we get that, that'll take, a year and a half or so to construct. And then we move forward with the other projects, getting the next phase of road construction for access to the bridge and access to the island and the developable facilities, and move that forward. So we're looking at, the next 2 to 3 years in basic infrastructure and then moving the ball forward. So, within the next 5 years or so, we may see some development of facilities on Fourchon Island.
Bulkheading and all
Correct.
that goes with it, and the construction and the fortification. That's all
correct.
you have to do. We talked about Port Fourchon, Fourchon Island. Let's talk about the future. Everybody always talking about what the future might be is wind and offshore wind. I know they made a couple of federal fields, one out of
Galveston.
Lake Charles, Galveston, and one out of Lake Charles, Calcasieu. So how would Fourchon be able to play in those waters?
So we've been involved from the beginning when the Governor John Bel Edwards requested to have the BOEM, the federal government, Department of Interior, create the group of different government agencies to create this task force, this offshore wind Gulf of Mexico task force. I've been involved in that since then, and it's kind of evolved into what we're seeing as a federal lease sale for offshore wind. Now that's kind of focused on Western Louisiana and the northeastern Gulf, northwestern Gulf in Texas, off of Galveston. But as we have been a part of the Deepwater Gulf of Mexico and servicing, as we do today, 100% of the assets in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico when it comes to energy, we believe that we're going to be positioned very well because we're centrally located in the Gulf to service the offshore wind assets, no matter where they are. Right. Because of the supply chain that we have, because of the expertise we have, and just because of the capability that we have. Now, outside of that, there's going to be a lease sale at some point June or July of this year. BOEM and Bessie haven't really said exactly when they're getting their ducks in a row to do that. Now, it's going to take at least 5, if not 7 or so years before you even see the first turbine built in those areas post, the lease sale. What we anticipate is that we'll see prior to that wind turbines built in state waters within that 3-mile area of the state of Louisiana. There's a lot of emphasis on that right now. I do know of, from what I understand, I don't know the names of the operators, but there are several operators looking at the state of Louisiana and state offshore waters to do some pilot projects in state waters to build wind turbines and provide energy and power, electricity from that. So we believe that, we just signed a right of first refusal agreement with Crowley Wind, who would be providing a logistics service facility at Port Fourchon. That is the first announced purpose-built offshore wind facility in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're excited about that opportunity. They're waiting, they're looking to see what kind of contracts they can sign. As soon as they can sign some contracts, they'll sign an actual lease for the property and move forward. So we'll see. It's all on speculation right now. We're looking to see how that'll play out. But we surely do anticipate and believe that Fouchon will play a key role in the development of offshore wind in the Gulf of Mexico, as we are for offshore oil and gas.
Yeah. So, kind of like the state has, you have the shelf where you have you have oil rigs that are out there that are not in federal lease waters and that kind of stuff. So it might be the same way. Now, at one time we had talked about the infrastructure of getting the energy in and using like the loop, those pipelines, right? Now they were talking about using the same system to get electricity in, or no?
So they're looking at different corridors to lay the cable down into. Fouchon is a good location to bring power back to shore from offshore because of the transmission lines that actually come all the way down to the coast. There's not too many places in Louisiana or across the Gulf Coast that there's that much, in Texas maybe, but in Louisiana, Fouchon's, the furthest south you can drive a car, right, in the state of Louisiana.
And it's centrally located.
And it's centrally located. So that's where. And
Texas has a different grid system too.
Different grid system.
They're not on the federal grid like
that's correct.
Like we
that's
are.
Correct.
So yeah, to get to the federal grid, it seems like that would be the best way to go. Is just follow those same lines. But
that's correct.
I'm not sure how close you could put an oil pipeline and an electricity pipeline. I don't know all that, but if it could go together, it seemed like it would be a good way to go. Blue and green energy is what we hear about, right? And that's what we're talking about. Green would be the wind. Blue might be like hydrogen
based off of natural gas.
They're talking about fusion now too, which is a different, almost like a fission as opposed to when you're talking about nuclear. But it seems like Florida and some of those states may be more interested if it's wind turbines or if it's blue compared to the old oil and gas. They were always against that. So this it may not just be in our little corridor, it may be all the way around the coast.
That's correct. There's offshore wind brings about numerous other opportunities because a lot of the offshore wind projects have some sort of hydrogen component to it. And when you're using the power that's generated from offshore wind to create hydrogen, that classifies it as green hydrogen, okay? Because it's a zero carbon emitting energy that's creating that hydrogen. So there's a lot of talk about hydrogen. There's some talk about ammonia, about methanol, all of those things being created off of offshore wind development. That's green. That would be green components for those. If it's based off of natural gas, it's blue.
I got you.
And then so on. The list goes
I got you. Well, I guess what I was saying, you may have more customers to the east as opposed to the west because they haven't been in the oil and gas business. So.
And what I would anticipate is that a lot of this electricity that's going to be created, at least in state waters initially, would be more of an industrial use electricity rather than a residential use electricity because of price, but it also allows them to reduce their carbon footprint.
Right.
So that's how kind of things are going
just
here.
getting it onto the grid that we talked about earlier.
Right.
And that's how all of that seems to work. We were built on oil and gas and energy around here. What are we doing now? And things seem to be picking up?
Yeah. Look, there's a little bit of a rebound taking place right now in the oil and gas sector and in drilling, in production. So that's a good thing, right? That's our bread and butter. That's what we were built on. That's what this area. We started as a fishing communities and went into oil and gas, and we're the fabricators, we're the servicers, and that's our claim to fame. And we do a good job at it, right, in this region. And oil and gas is doing well right now. I mean, it's not great, right? It's not 2014, right. But I don't know that we'll see that again. But we do have a good bit of rigs drilling today in the Gulf, about 19 rigs drilling new wells in the Gulf. We probably have about 28 or so, maybe 30 rigs doing some sort of activity when you add them all together. So that 19 plus makes up that difference to about 30. So that's good business. And every time there's a rig drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, that means business for this community, business for the port, business for our businesses, for our tenants in this area. So that seems to be continuing. The price of oil, is fluctuating. I saw a report the other day of some speculation that we could see the price of oil on the rise in the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. You know, it's always interesting to see how the oil and gas industry reacts. Look, we're competing on a global scale
Sure.
for investment in our offshore energy sector. So anytime we do things politically, policy-wise, regulation-wise, in our country, in our state, but mainly it's our state's been very friendly, right?
Sure.
It's on the federal level. That causes some hesitancy to want for these
Right,
companies to want to
investments.
spend their money in our country, and that's what we're kind of competing against right now. But with the price of the barrel of oil and kind of staying on a little slightly elevated, the investments are being made and things are happening. That's good. That's good for the future. We had been on a trajectory to lose the ability to produce more oil, and our production numbers we're gonna start to slow down. We need to see more drilling activity so that those can get to production, so our production numbers can continue to go up. Because what we can tell you, what we know is that demand is not going anywhere for oil.
No.
No matter what anyone says,
Right.
demand is not going anywhere. In fact, it's increasing worldwide.
sure.
So we need to continue to produce the energy we need for our country. And we talked about offshore wind earlier, the segment before this, right? Offshore wind we're not transitioning from oil and gas. I mean, in the media, you hear a lot about
sure.
the energy transition. We're not transitioning from oil and
They're
gas.
tweeting on their phones made of
Correct.
petroleum products.
We're adding to our ability to provide the energy needed for our country and around the world.
Yeah.
So that's where we need to be thinking. And oil and gas are going to continue to play a key role in our energy for the future.
Well, sure. I mean, even if we all went to all electric cars tomorrow,
Yeah.
we still use petroleum products for a lot more stuff
create
than
it.
just cars, right?
That's
so
correct.
yeah, we do that. There's a lot more uses for medicines and plastics and everything else that goes along with it. So yeah, when you have a president that says he wants to end fossil fuels, right? That doesn't help an oil company want to do $1 billion project out there. So the lease sales now,
Yes.
are they available and say we get another president might be a little more friendly to that. Do you think they'll start that investment?
So we had a lease sale in March. We're going to have another lease sale this fall, I think sometime September timeframe. But then that'll probably be the last lease sale until 2025.
Really?
Because we currently do not have an active 5-year plan, and they can't sell leases without a 5-year plan. Purposefully, administration waited to do a 5-year plan. We will probably have a 5-year plan done by early next year, but that means no lease sales until 2020. So we'll have a 1-year gap of lease sales in the Gulf of Mexico. That's not a good thing.
No.
Right?
In the meantime, we asked Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and Russia to produce more oil.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, Harry, because we asked Venezuela, who has the highest carbon intensity barrel of oil. We're saying in our country that we don't want oil and gas because of the carbon footprint and because we're global warming and all this stuff, right? But yet, instead of us producing it, who has the least carbon intensive footprint for a barrel of oil, we're going to go ask the worst player in that. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't
It looks like
make
they're
any
just
sense.
trying to move our percentage down a little bit, but,
Correct.
but it's not going to help the environment, which is supposed to be the overall goal.
And if you look in reality, the United States has reduced our carbon footprint as a country drastically, and no one else is doing it.
Quickly, 30 seconds, carbon capture. Speaking of carbon, seems like a big deal. They were trying to do that now where you bury it and it becomes a rock down on.
Correct.
Where is any of that going to be in the Gulf?
Yes, so it's on land right now. There's some bills in the legislature that are going through for that. I believe that's kind of like the next frontier for the shelf. Carbon capture is going to be a big player in the coming years in offshore.
It'd be great. Another role, and those things pop up all the time. Chett, we sure appreciate the update, man.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Great news, especially with that cooperative endeavor. We'll be right back. More Bite Time right after this.